Welcome to our gospel preview again. My name is Alex Leach. I am the director of formation here at Trinity Cathedral. And joining me is Eileen Harvey-Qualset. Hi, Eileen.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to see you, Reverend Alex.
Thanks. Nice to see you too, Eileen. And so we'll jump into it. We're getting started a little late. We are looking at the prodigal son parable, which is chapter 15 in the Gospel of Luke. Luke chapter 15, and mostly verses 11 through 32. As is our normal pattern, I'm going to read the passage one time, give us some silence for a minute, and then I'll just ask you if anything jumps out at you. And we'll start there in our discussion. Hmm. Gospel according to Luke. All the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus. Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Get the fatted calf and kill it. Let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound.' Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" If anything, what of anything catches your attention, jumps out at you?
Live again.
But I'm sorry.
Your was dead and is alive again.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Amen. I love this gospel passage. It feels like a sermon all by itself. Like you almost don't even have to say anything about it. Do you want to say more about though why what about that phrase?
Um, because it's resurrection,
Yeah.
and this, this in terms of like with friends, when you're having difficulties with friends, and maybe you don't see each other for a while or a couple of years or something, and then you have to figure out how to um if like if you want to figure out how to heal that.
Right.
And um it's a resurrection. It's a change of how we view another. It's a change of, if they were the one that, if they were the one that, did something wrong,
Mhm.
then one needs to change one's heart in order to
Mm.
do that.
Yep.
And even if it was my responsibility and someone comes to me,
Yeah.
I've learned through being a Christian, I have learned that it's I don't have to hold on to my that piece of control.
Mm.
I can look at it and say, oh, yeah, and then
Yeah.
ask for forgiveness, and then we have resurrection again.
Mm. Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so if we die to, it's that the endings that we have and how they
Mm.
can begin again.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, but
Mhm.
I've been all of these.
Yeah, I was going to ask which character are we? That's always a good way to enter into this parable. And I've been all of them too. Yeah. Do you have one
And
today that you are?
today,
Yeah.
huh, today, um, hmm, probably I don't want to say the dissolute son, but
Mhm.
the son who's realizing that, I've got to go home and
Yeah.
make things right.
Right.
And all that what that entails, the self inspection,
Yeah.
introspection,
Yeah.
reaching out to God,
Yeah.
to uh, choosing to be forgiven,
Yeah.
all those
Right. He could have stayed with the pigs.
actions.
Could,
Yeah,
I mean, he says he's not eating anything and he's hungry. He's got to get food somewhere. He's still living. He
yeah.
didn't die. So he was able to travel all the way from this distant land back home. He's got to be eating something. But he
And
could have just stayed there.
yeah, and he's humbling himself,
A lot of
and
humility in that position.
we
A lot of
humble
humility.
ourselves, and
Yeah.
both, and as a Christian, when we're, trying to walk our path, we've got to
Yeah.
humble ourselves. And it's
It's,
and I have one of my sons is doing really well, and one of my sons is really, really struggling.
yeah.
And I'm mad at him,
Yeah.
off and on, and it's not reasonable to be
Mm.
mad because I understand his history. But
Mm.
so it's like when he shows up, sometimes I'm very happy to see him, and other times it's like, oh, now what do you need?
Yeah. Right.
So
Oh, totally. Very normal.
yeah. So
Yeah.
there's
Mm.
so anyway, so it's a really rich
Oh,
piece.
so rich.
So rich.
Something that came up was two things that came up is when we're talking about humility, it's interesting how the older brother also has to wrestle with humility. That actually both characters, not the father, but both sons, have to wrestle with this humility thing, and we don't get in really good parable form, we don't get what the older son does. Meaning we don't does he go into the house after the father says this, does the older brother say, "You're right, good, I'm glad he's home and I'm gonna come in and go inside the house," or does he not accept it? Does he stay outside in the field and say, "Forget it, Dad. You're still not here listening to me."
Mhm.
We don't, it's a cliffhanger for a reason. Because Jesus is talking to the Pharisees and the scribes, who are ostensibly the older brother in the story.
Yeah.
They've stayed on the right path. They've ostensibly been doing everything God asked them to do, and now they're grumbling because the tax collectors and the sinners are getting welcomed around Jesus's table, and as the lectionary sets it up.
Mhm.
Um, and so they're classic parable inviting them. What are you going to do? What's your choice going to be? But they're essentially also wrestling with that character is also wrestling with humility. Am I better than the brother who's lived dissolutely, right? Am I better than that brother, or are we both the son of this very generous father? Are we both? Um, I know, and and then the other thing that came up briefly, and then I'll move on, is by telling me that story about your two sons, I hear this invitation for you to be the father. I mean, the mother,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we can change the genders, but right, to be in that role, right? Which is hard because it's too generous for most of us. I'm not that generous. It's a really hard, I mean, and not always sustainable.
Yeah.
If the son is gonna keep squandering the gifts,
Yeah.
you're gonna eventually run out of stuff. You're gonna eventually run out of
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah.
And I my brother was, the one who went off to college and has multiple
Okay.
degrees and, did all that.
Yeah.
And I eventually finished my bachelor's degree and had a, perfectly acceptable career.
Yeah.
But, I always kind of knew
Hmm.
that didn't do it right.
Hmm.
So it's like, so I can like understand that, but
Yeah.
I mean, it's not to this point, and, it wasn't even said stuff, it's just the stuff
Right.
that you hold in your heart and you know, wish you could talk to your parents about it now, but they're gone.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yes.
yeah, so
Hmm.
yeah, it's all there.
It is. And so human. I relate to that older brother who says, "You didn't even give me a fatted calf to party with my friends." Right? It's that pout, it's that and it's victimhood. It's this and I mean this parable is great for exploring like that victimhood mentality. Everything is I the who the I am being treated poorly. I'm always getting the short end of the stick. I'm being left out. um to really challenge that of like the father does not scold the older brother.
Mhm,
The father says, "Everything I have is yours.
mhm,
Everything I have is yours." And so why didn't you ever ask for it? Why didn't you
mhm,
ever ask for the goat or whatever? Why? That's for me kind of the question that gets begged there by
mhm.
the father saying, "Everything I have is yours." Um, is you've been here, you're right, you have been here the whole time. Why haven't you been enjoying that?
And that's
Right? Yeah.
yes, and that's as we were talking, it jumped into my head. Well, he has had beautiful clothes this whole
Yep.
time. He's
Yep.
been working, yes, but he's had
Yep.
great food. He's
Right.
had like the sole attention of both of his, well, I'm assuming both of his parents, but at least
Sure.
of his
Yep. Right.
father. He's learning how to run the
Yep.
farm or so I mean, there's so much, that he has. And
Yeah.
it's a good reminder, wow, there's so much.
Right.
And are you really going to uh, is this what's going to break it? This little
Right.
tiny thing going to break
This
it?
little thing.
Yeah.
And the why not enjoy it? Like
Yeah.
when you have it all, like for me, it's this reminder. because I can very easily be the older brother, um, where I have so much, but yet I'm not enjoying any of it. Meaning, I'm not letting myself enjoy any of it. That's the better way to say it. I'm not letting myself enjoy any of it. Like you're saying, he's got clothes. He didn't have to take care of pigs, with the added layer of course, Jesus is speaking to a Jewish audience as he tells this parable. Jews would not touch pigs, they would not have pigs, right? And so when the younger brother has to go and take care of pigs in the distant land, because he's off in Gentile land, he's left Israel, in the parable, uh, it's so humiliating. He's not supposed to be dealing with pigs. He's a good, well, he's not so good, but he's a Jewish boy. He's a Jewish boy, and he's not supposed to be dealing with pigs. But here he is taking care of the pigs. And
Mhm.
so the older brother doesn't even have to do that. But the older brother doesn't seem to, the word that came for me is doesn't seem to take Sabbath, right?
Yeah.
And how much do I refuse to take Sabbath, even though there is the spiritual practice of rest and rejoicing and enjoying the fruits of labor, enjoying all that we have in our lives as they are without needing anything more.
Mhm.
Um, and the older son doesn't seem to be doing that, and I can relate. I can relate. I sometimes struggle with that,
Mhm.
builds up
Mhm.
resentment, you know.
Especially when you try so hard to do it perfectly. I mean,
Oh my God.
he's been doing it,
Right.
and yeah.
Mm. But then you had said you were actually resonating with the desolate. I made us focus on the older son, but you were saying you resonate with that younger son, the introspection, the having to look at everything, the humility. Um, it does take all that.
Mhm.
And when I'm in that role, like I don't know I don't know if this is the right word, but the scary thing is to see that the father welcomes him while he's still far off, runs to him, you
Yeah.
know, uh, won't let him finish this like woe is me self-pity monologue he's been practicing,
Mhm.
um, and welcomes him back so lavishly.
Mhm. And I had explained at one point that um, the father sent, Gustavus and said, go and get him a robe and get him a ring and
Yeah.
bring it out to him so that when he comes in, people won't see him as in
Mm.
rags and, stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
So yeah, so it's not, so it's, there's that piece of,
I never thought about that. I love that. I
yeah.
love that. I never thought about the father is thinking about how do I want the household, whoever's in the household to see my son when he first walks in the door. I want them to see him as royalty, as decked out, beautiful, taken care of, right?
Yeah.
Put together.
And
Yeah.
and if I was the son, I'd be, you know, look looking at my father, and then looking at the robe and looking at the ring and wondering, what are people going to think of me? Because,
Mm,
you know,
yeah.
I don't know, in a village, everybody knows what everybody does.
Everyone,
So
right?
everybody's know he's been out,
Yeah.
doing this.
Whatever.
And
Yeah.
so so it's not just reconciling with his parents, but it's like having that piece of humility to know I'm going to walk into that judgment, but my
Yeah.
dad's here, and I'm
Right.
gonna have food and clothing and I'm going to work hard and
Right.
I'm not going to get any inheritance. I've already had mine, but
Right.
I'm going to be here.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of courage, the younger son has to embody a lot of courage to do what he's done, to come home, to receive all this, to continue the walk, like you're just saying, to put on the robe, to put on the ring, and walk into that house and into the village as the village gets gathered, to have everyone witness him, takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage. Hmm. And there, when you were saying that, what came up in me, what I thought of is there is that challenge then again in the gospel to um, how do I want to articulate it? Here's how God sees you, and so you don't need to be so worried about how everyone else sees you.
Yeah.
Right? Like in what you're sharing about coming into here's how the Father wants the Son to be seen, and you're walking in and all these people know what you've been up to, or they have their judgments about what you've been up to or whatever, right? And but this robe and this ring and these sandals, this is how my dad sees me. This is how my father sees me, right? My father sees me as a beloved child, an honored guest, an honored family member.
Hmm.
And I might not see myself that way, and no one else in the house or no one else in the village might see me that way.
Yeah.
Dad sees me that way. Father does, mother does, God does. And that's the only thing that kind of in this story matters. And how hard that is for me to live into. Because I'm always checking out what do other people think about me?
Yeah.
How do they see me? How do I
Yeah.
fix that?
Yeah.
Right. Um, yeah, yeah. Mm, mm. I'm trying to think what else might be of use as we explore this passage. Mm. Well, seeing their time, I know we're seeing our time. Why don't I read it? And because I know it's a longer passage, why don't I read it one last time? I'm going to read it one last time, and we'll just notice and see what comes up for us as we read it here at one final time. Hmm. Luke chapter 15. All the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." So Jesus told them this parable. There was a man who had two sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." So he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare? But here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' So he set off and went to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. Then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly, bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet, and get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked what was going on. He replied, "Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he has got him back safe and sound." Then he became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him, but he answered his father, "Listen, for all these years I have been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command. Yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him." And the father said to him, "Son, you are always with me. All that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found." For me, in both readings, what stood out was how the language, this funny, and it's so petty and it's so human. And for some reason, I'm finding it so profound. When the older brother says, "This son of yours," and because it's his brother, "This son of yours," and then the father replies, "This brother of yours," right? And that play of like, um, I there's always the joke when two married people have kids of like, "Well, that's your kid." When the kid's acting out, it's like, "Well, that's your son, that's your daughter," right? This way in which we shift like the relationship away from us, right? The brother saying, "This son of yours, he's not even my brother, he's your whatever, it's your deal," right?
Mhm.
But the father comes right back and like doesn't take the bait and just repositions it of like, "This brother of yours," and I don't know, there's something about that today is really because it's so human, it's so petty, and it's laughable. It's kind of funny if you're not in it. Um, and yet it's also this really profound shift of the heart, shift of the mindset, you know. I mean, it takes me back to the beginning where in the first verse where it's like you have these sinners and tax collectors, and you have these Pharisees and scribes. And the Pharisees and scribes are certainly viewing the tax collectors as and sinners as, well, they're sons of Abraham, but they're not my brother. They're maybe Israelites, they may be Jews, fellow Jews, but they ain't my brother, they ain't my sister. But uh and that repositioning of, no, this is your sibling, this is your kindred, you know. Um, mm.
I also like that. Oh gosh, can you hear that?
A little bit, but it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Um, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them,
Yeah.
because it's like, there's all stuff. There's all stuff that we're like, oh man, I wish I hadn't done that. And, Jesus still opens his arms to us.
Yeah.
And that's amazing.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
it
Yeah.
is. I haven't killed anyone, I haven't murdered
Sure.
anyone,
Yeah.
but I've kind of trod on some of the other ones,
Well, and in Matthew's gospel, Jesus says, even if you say, "I hate my brother," you've killed them. You've committed
Yeah,
murder in your heart, right? I mean,
yeah,
in that
yeah.
whole Sermon on the Mount. Um, it's tricky. It's right. And so this. right? The overwhelming compassion, graciousness, love of this father figure. In the parable, it's a father, but the father figure who runs to the son, and it's to both. It's to both because sometimes it's important to highlight the second son. Both sons, the father leaves the house and seeks them out. Right, the older son is coming, walking back, and the father sees him from a far away off, runs to get him. Older son hears about what's going on, refuses to come into the house, so the father comes out to the field to plead with him, right? And so the father is reaching out, is willing to leave the house, wander, and come to the children, right? Is coming to them, is not waiting for the children to necessarily get to the house, right? Um,
There's a
yeah.
there's a modern Christian song that I like, and
Mhm.
one of the passage that one that they repeat is leave your shame at the door. It's not welcome anymore when you're in your father's house. I
Mm.
really like
Yeah.
that. So this I
Yeah.
kept coming up, as
Yeah.
that song. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Absolutely.
then it's the odd thing about it's not welcome anymore. Like, have I been welcoming that? So anyway,
Mm.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
what will I leave behind? What am I going to drop as dead and then become alive, too. So
Right. Right. Yeah, we were talking about how the older son has to practice a lot of humility. He has to practice a lot of courage. He has to let go of. If the younger son is going to really wear the robe, wear the ring, participate in the feast, he has to at some point let go of the story he has in his head. I'm not worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.
mhm,
So that's shame. That's shame.
mhm.
That's
Yeah.
the I'm unworthy. Um, and the older son has to let go of the resentment and the egoism of I'm the best. I did everything right. I'm supposed to be here.
Yeah.
This party's supposed to be for me, right? Yeah, and so there's a lot of letting go, and it's funny how much I will cling to really sad and unhealthy patterns because they're just comfortable. I know how to be the unworthy son. I don't know how to be the redeemed son, for example, right?
Mhm.
It's a shift of identity, and it's hard. And even if we don't like shame, if we're more used to it, we'll live with it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And this keeps sort of poking me. I'll just say it as a final thought. Like the this son of yours and this brother of yours, that thing that I was feeling, what started finally coming up, but then I wanted to listen to where you were at because you started sharing. And it's uncomfortable, is how much we do that in our politics right now. In the political world, we have people who voted in different ways from us, and
Mhm.
I'm so much of Jesus, these are your kids. You deal with them. I don't know what to say about them. They call themselves Christians. They claim to be one of yours. You deal with it, Jesus. Right? And then I hear Jesus saying, "These are your brothers and sisters. You think you're so distant from them? You think you can be like in some other family? This is part of your family. This is
Mhm.
what's, you know, um, that one finally gets me to wonder, which is an unanswerable question for the parable, but for our lives, why did the younger son leave? Why did he do this? And because I think it's too simple to just say, well, he's greedy. He's just really greedy, right? I mean, that's one, but it's too simple. Could he not stand living under the shadow of his older brother, who was always lording it over him of how right he was and how he was the better son and he was always doing it right? And so he was like, I gotta get out of here. Was he just ambitious and he thought he was gonna build a life for him, like build a business for himself, a life? Um, you know what's going on in the family system of this family that the best idea, what the younger son thought was the best idea, the best thing he could come up with was, I'll take half my inheritance and leave. That's it's not a normal response. So there's, from our 21st century, 22nd century, whatever century we're in, um, psychology, we know there's something going on in that family system that this younger son feels like this is his best choice. And what's that about? Um, yeah. Any final thoughts you want to say before we close?
Um, I just, I love this today. I love,
Yeah.
yeah.
I liked it today too. Thank you for joining me. Thanks for being here.
Yay, thank you. It was
Yeah.
great.
All right. I'm gonna close our recording.
Sounds good.